This morning, you looked at your own hand under the bathroom light and didn't think about it twice. The color sitting on the back of that hand feels permanent, fixed, like it's always been exactly this way. It hasn't. For most of the time modern humans have existed, every single person on Earth carried the same skin, dark, dense with pigment, built for one specific environment under one specific sun. Somewhere between then and now, that skin split into an entire spectrum of tones, without a single person alive choosing it, and without one continuous timeline explaining how. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The shift from dark skin to light skin didn't happen once. It happened at least twice in two different parts of the world, using two completely different genetic tools. And one skeleton, pulled out of a cave in England, overturned almost everything scientists thought they understood about when any of it happened. Stay with that for a second. Two separate origins, one shocking skeleton. So if your skin is light, the real question isn't just why your ancestors changed. It's whether the story you've always assumed about that change is even the right one. Start at the beginning, before any of the branching happened. Around 2 million years ago, your earliest ancestors were losing something almost every other mammal relies on: thick body hair. Bare skin meant better cooling on the hot, open landscapes of East Africa. Sweat glands could finally do their job without fur trapping in the heat. But bare skin created a new problem. Unprotected skin under equatorial sun meant intense ultraviolet exposure every single day for an entire lifetime. Biological anthropologist Nina Jablonski at Penn State spent decades studying why the body's answer to that problem was pigment. Working with geographer George Chaplin, she published research in the Journal of Human Evolution showing that dark, melanin-rich skin wasn't decoration. It was protecting something far more specific: folate, a nutrient your body needs to build DNA and support healthy pregnancies. Ultraviolet radiation destroys folate circulating in the blood. Melanin, in this story, is basically a built-in bodyguard. Silent, permanently on duty, absorbing exactly the wavelength of light that would otherwise damage the genetic material underneath it. For hundreds of thousands of years, that bodyguard did its job perfectly. Underneath all of it sits a simple biological switch. Cells called melanocytes produce two forms of pigment: eumelanin, which reads as dark brown to black, and pheomelanin, which reads as a lighter reddish tone. Every shade of human skin on the planet comes from adjusting the ratio between those two pigments, not from adding some new substance nobody else has. Your ancestors didn't invent a new ingredient. They just turned the same dial in a different direction. Then people started walking. Beginning around 70,000 years ago, groups of modern humans began leaving Africa, moving into Europe, into Central Asia, into regions where the sun sat lower in the sky and delivered a fraction of the ultraviolet light it did back home. The same shield that once protected them became a liability. Dark skin blocks UV radiation almost too well in low sunlight environments. And UVB specifically is what skin needs to manufacture vitamin D, a nutrient essential for absorbing calcium and building strong bones. Move a population from equatorial Africa to Scandinavia and keep their high melanin skin unchanged, and over generations you get people starved of vitamin D, weaker bones, weaker immune responses, harder pregnancies in an unfamiliar climate. Evolution doesn't plan ahead. It just keeps whatever helps the next generation survive. In low UV environments, that meant favoring any mutation that let a little more ultraviolet light through the skin, restoring vitamin D production. Wait, but here's the part that breaks the story almost everyone assumes. You'd expect one mutation, spreading outward like ripples from a single ancestor. That's not what happened. Geneticist Sarah Tishkoff at the University of Pennsylvania spent years sequencing DNA across African populations and found something that upended the simple version of this story. Skin tone across Africa itself is staggeringly diverse, shaped by dozens of different gene variants, some of which are also linked to lighter pigmentation in populations far outside Africa entirely. In 2017, a study led by researcher Nicholas Crawford working in Tishkoff's lab, published in the journal Science, identified specific genes such as MFSD12 behind some of the darkest skin tones on the planet, found in populations in South Sudan and Ethiopia. Proof that dark skin was never one single genetic story either. Light skin in Europeans and light skin in East Asians turned out to come from almost entirely different sets of genes. East Asian populations carry variants in a gene called OCA2, among others, largely distinct from the European mutations. Two populations, thousands of miles apart, arrived at similar pale skin through two separate evolutionary paths, running in parallel without either one borrowing the mutation from the other. Nature solved the same problem twice, with two different genetic tools, in two different populations, at two different times. One of those tools came from an unlikely place, a fish tank. Geneticist Keith Cheng at Penn State was studying zebrafish when his team noticed a golden-colored mutant with unusually pale stripes. The gene responsible was called SLC24A5. When Cheng's team checked the human version of that same gene, published in the journal Science in 2005, they found a variant strongly associated with lighter skin in European populations. One single gene contributing a significant share of the color difference sitting on your own hand right now. A pigment mutation, first spotted in a fish tank, turned out to explain part of your own reflection in the mirror this morning. But timing is where this story gets stranger than almost anyone expects. For decades, the assumption was straightforward. Humans left Africa, moved into Europe, and skin lightened fairly quickly to adapt to the weaker sun. Case closed. Then, in 2018, researchers at the Natural History Museum in London, led by geneticist Selina Brace, extracted DNA from a 9,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Cheddar Gorge, England, nicknamed Cheddar Man. Everyone expected pale skin. Cheddar Man had walked across British soil for thousands of years after the ice sheets retreated. Plenty of time, by the old assumption, to lighten. The DNA said something else entirely. Dark skin, dark hair, and strikingly, blue eyes. Working alongside geneticist Mark Thomas at University College London, the team confirmed it. One of Britain's own ancient ancestors, thousands of years after modern humans first reached Europe, still carried skin built for African sunlight. Light skin across large parts of Europe arrived far later than the textbooks assumed. Evidence points to a wave of lightening within roughly the last several thousand years, overlapping almost exactly with the shift to farming. That timing is not a coincidence. Hunter-gatherers ate fish, organ meat, and animal fat, foods naturally rich in vitamin D, supplementing whatever the skin managed to produce from sunlight. Once agriculture spread and diets shifted toward grain, that dietary vitamin D dropped sharply. Suddenly, skin had to do more of the work alone. Population geneticist Ian Matheson and colleagues, scanning ancient European genomes for signs of rapid natural selection, found pigmentation genes among the strongest, fastest-shifting signals in the entire dataset. Evidence that lighter skin was pushed forward hard and pushed forward late, right as farming removed a nutritional safety net that had existed for tens of thousands of years. The shield built for one environment had to be dismantled the moment the food supply underneath it changed. We tend to think of skin color as something ancient, locked in place since the earliest humans. one of the oldest, most settled facts about our species. It's closer to the opposite. It's one of the most recent, fastest changing, still unfinished traits ever written into the human body, reshaped independently more than once, sometimes within a window of time smaller than written history itself. None of it happened through intention. No ancestor decided anything. Every shift came down to which random mutations happened to keep enough people alive long enough to reproduce in whatever specific patch of the planet they were standing on. Run that process in West Africa, and dark high-melanin skin kept winning for over 1 million years. Run it in Scandinavia, and a scattering of unrelated mutations, arriving over thousands of years, kept nudging skin paler, one small nutritional and reproductive advantage at a time. Run it in East Asia, and a mostly separate set of mutations solved the identical UV and vitamin D problem, arriving at a similar shade through a completely different genetic route. 3 regions. 3 separate solutions. 1 underlying pressure, how much ultraviolet light the local sun delivered, and how much vitamin D and folate the local environment could supply without it. Modern life moved people around the planet in single lifetimes instead of over dozens of generations. Jablonski's later modeling work traced how that speed mismatch still shows up today. People with high melanin skin living at far northern latitudes face a real, measurable risk of vitamin D deficiency, while people with low melanin skin living near the equator face sharply higher rates of UV-related skin damage. Your skin is still running calibration, built for wherever your ancestors happen to stand tens of thousands of years ago, not necessarily for the latitude you actually live at today. There's an even faster version of this same story happening inside you every summer. Tanning is melanocytes ramping up eumelanin production the moment UV exposure spikes, then dialing it back down when it doesn't. It's the exact same defense mechanism that took hundreds of thousands of years to evolve across entire populations, compressed into a matter of weeks inside one single body. Every line humans have drawn using skin color, every hierarchy, every assumption, every category treated as ancient and permanent, sits on top of a trait that, biologically speaking, is barely finished changing. Cheddarman's dark skin and blue eyes are a reminder that European and pale weren't always the same word. For most of the time modern humans have lived on that landmass, they weren't. We built entire identities on top of a trait that a few thousand years of diet and latitude could rewrite, and in more than one population actually did rewrite. Genetically, the deepest divides in human skin color sit within Africa itself, not between Africa and everywhere else, exactly as Tishkoff's research found. Which means the categories people treat as ancient racial boundaries are, biologically, some of the newest and shallowest lines ever drawn on the human body. Look at your hand again. That color took your ancestors 2 entirely separate evolutionary routes. 1 unexpected fish tank gene, 1 buried skeleton in an English gorge, and thousands of years of shifting diets to arrive at. It was never ancient. It was never finished. It's still being written 1 generation at a time, and most people looking at their own skin will never know how recently that particular sentence was typed.